Eighth Amendment deals with punishments and our protections. The Eighth Amendment is absolutely essential when it comes to protecting us as Americans. The Eighth Amendment states excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments be inflicted. This amendment is open to a great deal of interpretation. It has interpretive words like excessive. It has words like cruel and unusual. All of these seem to be very subjective terms. But things that we can define are words like bail. Bail is money that a defendant puts up in the court to guarantee that he or she will return to trial. The idea is if a person pays $10,000 in bail, that's their guarantee. $10,000 says they will show up on the trial date and they will not have to stay in prison. If a person cannot make their bail amount, then they have to sit in prison until their trial comes around. So bail is an essential right for Americans to have because it allows us to not be incarcerated without being convicted. So excessive bail shall not be required. It is our guarantee that we will come back to trial. And how we get that guarantee? When we come back to the trial, we get our bail money back. So if bail is $10,000, I give the court $10,000. I show up to trial, they give me my $10,000 back because here I am. Of course, if I jump bail, if I skip the trial, then I waive my rights to get that money back. The Eighth Amendment goes on, it says, nor excessive fines imposed. Excessive. What is excessive? Well, ultimately, that's going to be up to the judge and any appeals that go on. And then it goes into nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. Now, cruel and unusual. What is cruel? What is unusual? Are we talking about mean? Are we talking about massive? This is up to a great deal of interpretation. And this has changed a lot. Our interpretation of what cruel and unusual has changed a great deal since the founding of this country. After all, way back in the day, people were put to death by hanging. People were put to death by having their heads cut off. People were branded with hot irons as punishment. People could have their fingers or their arms or their ears or their noses or other things cut off as a punishment for a crime. So our interpretation of what is cruel and unusual has changed quite a bit since the founding of this country. So we might want to consider some Eighth Amendment exceptions. Is it possible for a person to be held without bail? Well, yes, a person can be held without bail if they present a flight risk, if they are facing a crime that is especially heinous, where they are likely to flee and not come back regardless of how much money they put up, or if they are still considered a danger to themselves or the community. A person can be held without bail. What about solitary confinement? Some people argue that solitary confinement, the way it is cruel and unusual punishment. That is to deny a human being the interaction of other human beings. However, the Supreme Court has ruled that solitary confinement in prison is not considered cruel and unusual. What about withholding medical care? If a person is sick, does the prison need to help them out and provide that medical care? Well, the answer is yes. If a person is sick, if a person is having an emergency, they must be taken care of. It can be everything from a toothache to a broken bone. Prison cannot withhold medical care. If somebody has diabetes, they must be given insulin. If a person has cancer, they must be given their cancer treatments or their AIDS treatments. Those things cannot be withheld. What about caring for addicts? If a person is addicted to heroin and suddenly is incarcerated and doesn't have access, yes, once again, The prison must care for addicts up to a point, but that does not include providing them with alcohol or drugs that are illegal. Can a prison reduce food portions as punishment? Well, not necessarily. When it comes to food and what people eat while they are in prison, this is going to be based primarily on a calorie count. Now, a prison can change what form those calories take, and they can provide meals that are less than tasty. However, they cannot reduce calories below a certain point to literally starve prisoners to death. But speaking of death, what about capital punishment? Capital punishment is a very controversial issue. Does the government have the right to put a person to death? Some people say yes, absolutely. Some people say no, not so much. Several states have already banned capital punishment, Virginia being a recent state to ban capital punishment here at the state level. The federal government still has capital punishment as a potential outcome of a conviction, and so do many other states. But capital punishment itself has generally been upheld by the Supreme Court, though the methods of capital punishment have changed drastically. We no longer put people to death by hanging or by guillotine. The firing squad is very rarely used, and of course, the electric chair has pretty much gone away, along with the gas chamber. Today, the most preferred method of capital punishment is lethal injection. It is this system of the Sixth and Seventh and Eighth Amendments where we might say that it is better for 10 guilty people to go free than one innocent person be punished. It seems that there are many technicalities, many protections through due process that protect the rights of the accused, even if they have committed drastic and heinous crimes. However, it is our general belief that it is far better to let somebody who's guilty go free than to punish somebody who is not guilty. And so this basic maxim says that if we are going to make an error, it needs to be on those who are in danger of losing their lives, their liberty, and their property. Of course, even that has its critics. Here we see the accused being carried by members of the government with the judge rolling out the red carpet, the long road to justice, and it does seem, according to this artist, that the victim is left to be trampled on once again.